Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be previewing France against Australia in the Autumn Nations series, which is kicking off tomorrow. I'm recording this on a Friday. It's the late kickoff, so it's the 8 p.m. kickoff UK time. A game I'm actually doing commentary on as well, so I've kind of been doing my research, doing a bit of prep for it, and just thought I'd do a video looking ahead to it, what's kind of maybe interesting ahead of this one. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and drop a comment down below. Give me your thoughts on either of these teams, France and Australia, going forward into the autumn. All right, let's get into it. So as I say, I am going to be doing commentary on this one. So for any of you that happen to not be watching it, 8 p.m. kickoff in the UK. It will be available on TalkSport 2, which you can get online. Myself and the former England player Rocky Clark will be on commentary. Really looking forward to it as a game. The two teams were announced yesterday, and they're two sides which obviously come into it with vastly different form. France now 10 months out from a home World Cup, which they are probably going to be the favourites for. At this moment in time, it would be them or Ireland, realistically. Perhaps a lot of people would give it to France just because of that home advantage. They're on a brilliant run of form, and Australia, on the other hand, have been incredibly inconsistent. Let's start with the home side. Let's start with the French. Because we last saw them play against Japan in the summer. They've made 11 changes from that time. Again, it was another summer tour where France used it as an opportunity to rotate a lot of the players in the squad. So the only players actually from the last game they played against Japan that are still starting tomorrow against Australia is Thibaut Flamand and Charles Olivon in the pack, and Yorem Moefana and Damien Penaud in the back line. And then there's a lot of the normal guys that you would expect to return to the team. Cyril Bailly has come back in the front row, which is quite interesting because he's barely played this season. And it's the same story for Romain Ntamack at fly half as well. Again, he hasn't played for quite a while. He has been out with injury, but is coming back in to start this Autumn Nation Series opener for the French. And France, at the moment, they're on a winning streak. They've won their last 10 games. The last time that they did that was back in the 1930s, which kind of gives you an indication of just how unprecedented this run of form is. We know they are on good form, but when they're doing things which they haven't done since the 1930s, it does show you kind of just how good they are and how consistent they're being as well. When we think about France, certainly the stereotype for many, many years was the fact that you never knew which France was going to turn up. And that wasn't true for a while, because we did go through a period where fairly consistently France were turning up and being really average. Now it's gone the full 180 and France are turning up, and every time they are really, really, really good. So I expect this match to probably be a France victory. In all honesty, I can't particularly see Australia doing a job on them. I'll get onto the Australian team selection in just a moment. But you look at the quality through the French side: Bailly, Marchand, Antonio in the front row, Flamand and Woki in the second row. Perhaps a little bit lighter second row pairing because Paul Willemse's not there. He misses out through injury. So, I mean, they're still both really good players, but they perhaps don't have the physicality that they would otherwise have in the second row. Back row, really, really strong. Olivon, Jelonch and Aldrit. Olivon, I mean, he was their captain and then he missed the Six Nations last year. He wasn't even involved in the Grand Slam winning team. So a player of his quality able to come back into that back row is pretty frightening. Dupont and Ntamack, the halfbacks, we know exactly what they can do. The creativity, Dupont, World Player of the Year, Six Nations Player of the Year, just so good. And then in the back line as well, they got Penaud, Moefana, Thomas Ramos is at fullback, and Dante and Ficou in the centres. So look, it's a France team absolutely packed full of talent. We know exactly what they're going to bring, and I think they will continue to be incredibly impressive in this autumn series and in the build-up to the World Cup in about 10 months' time, as I say. Final thing for France, they've gone for a 6-2 split on the bench, which isn't really that strange a thing anymore in the modern game, but certainly means they've got some big boys that are going to be bringing off the bench to add some real firepower to that forward pack. So excited to see what they can bring. In terms of Australia, we have already seen them once already this autumn. They beat Scotland last weekend in a game which they probably should have lost, really. Scotland had a penalty right at the end, which could have won it, which they missed. But Australia then, thanks to Nick White's ingenious kind of grubber kick 22 won the game. And I guess if we're going to be kind to Australia, first of all, I said that it's a game they probably should have lost, but they've won. A lot of matches recently, it feels to me, it's been the opposite side of that. They should have won, but they've ended up losing. Probably the game against New Zealand at Marvel Stadium with the controversial referees call, the most obvious example of that. So that's a positive for Australia. Perhaps this is a side that is steadily finding a way to win when previously it wasn't able to, but they are still really inconsistent. They haven't won back-to-back test matches this season. And you think about, you know, the first test against England in the summer where they managed to get the victory and then went on to lose the next two tests. We look at it in the autumn in the Rugby Championship as well, where they'd pick up victories. They had a good victory over South Africa, and then they didn't then back that up. And this has been an Australian side that have been riddled by inconsistency. Now, in a part, Dave Rennie's team selection, to me, is a little bit surprising in some aspects. Some of it's due to injury. You've got Taniela Tupu, Nick White, Lolokai Foketi and Jock Campbell all coming in. The really interesting part is the 9. So Tate McDermott started against Scotland and then was replaced by Nick White. So it's Nick White that's starting this week, but Tate McDermott has dropped out entirely. And then it is Gordon, who is the replacement 9 on the bench. And Dave Rennie has basically said, because Australia have 5 matches this autumn, they've already played 1, this is going to be their second, they want to rotate those scrum halves. So essentially Gordon will start the next game, maybe McDermott will come back on the bench, and Nick White will drop out, which is quite a transparent selection policy, but in such a pivotal position, to me seems quite strange, just because you're not going to get any continuity there. And that's so important for them to be able to build that up, I would have thought. For a team that's been so inconsistent, not having that continuity at scrum half could be something that's going to hurt them. I don't know, let me know what you think, but that to me raised some eyebrows really when I saw the quotes from Dave Rennie about the selection at 9. So outside of that, as I say, Tupu, he joined Slipper and Parecki in the front row. It's Nick Frost and Caden Neville in the second row, Jed Holloway, Michael Hooper and Rob Valetini in the back row. Nick White, as I mentioned, at scrum half. Bernard Foley continues at fly half. I think not many people saw his return to the Australia team, but I think he's taken it with both hands, really. Playing in Japan, obviously Quade Cooper, still injured, has come back into the team. I personally think he's looked pretty good. I think the fly half position has been an issue for Australia, and over recent years Bernard Foley has always, to me, looked the most comfortable in that position. But again, let me know what you think. And then we've got Foketi at inside centre. He joins Len Ikitau, who's outside him, Tom Wright, Andrew Kellaway on the wings, and Jock Campbell gets a first start at fullback. But looking through this Australia team, I mean, whether we're talking about Dave Parecki or the replacement front row props, the Gibbon and Robertson, there's a lot of guys who have recently got their first call up, but aren't necessarily that young. I think there's a lot of positions where Australia, whether it be through injury, whether it be through selection criteria and not only picking a certain amount of players that play outside of Australia, means that I feel like they've never been able to pick their best side. There's a lot of guys who've come in and then dropped out and then come back in again who don't necessarily have that many caps. They're quite experienced in terms of age and maybe at domestic level, but it's just a side that has really struggled to find momentum, to struggle to find consistency, and I fear that that's going to be the case for Australia moving into the next World Cup. I want to see the green shoots. I want to grab hold of those wins, whether it be against South Africa or whether it be against England or whether it be pushing New Zealand really, really close and realistically should have beaten them. I want to hold on to those things and think Australia are going to move forward. I just need to see it consistently on the pitch. Could they do something against France? I mean, who knows? France were pushed relatively close in the first game of the autumn last year against Argentina. They ended up winning fairly comfortably, but it was quite a competitive game. Can Australia keep it a competitive game for 60 minutes and then try and wrestle it away from France in the final 20? Personally, I don't think so, but maybe I'm sleeping on the Aussies a little bit. Look, let me know what you think about both of these sides. France, World Cup favourites at this stage, despite Ireland being world number 1. Let me know what you think. As for Australia, I mean, they are, in my opinion, one of the great question marks of international rugby. I want them to be good again. I'm just not sure it's going to happen. All right, I'll see you in the next one.